1. 2 years ago, I moved in with my mom, and before that, I didn't notice anything strange. The only thing I noticed was this weird feeling that makes you uncomfortable. But I thought it was just that I wasn't used to being in that house. I almost never went there because it was far from my dad's house. At this moment, my room was beside the front door. I remember as soon as I walked in the room, there was that freaky feeling. Over time, I began to feel trapped. Like my room was a cell and I wasn't allowed to go out. I started to feel extremely sad and also angry, but mostly sad. And also, after weeks, I just didn't want to get out of my room. I know it can be a lot of things. I have moved. It was while the pandemic was at its peak. I missed my dad, etc. But my mom decided that I was going to be upstairs with my sisters and then my brothers would take my room because it was bigger. I was upset, but, life. Then shit happened, and kept happening. Firstly, I started to feel like someone was holding and hugging me while I was trying to fall asleep. I was trying because even though it wasn't anything bad, it's still scary because, it's not normal and your brain's just like, there's a problem, girl, Sometimes it was also caressing my hair and just touching me, and it keeps going. Then, sometimes it knocks on my door and tries to open it, or I hear footsteps. My room is next to the stairs and I hear someone walking down or up the stairs, knocking on the walls and windows, things like that. I often hear whispers, people talking, but not voices I know. The biggest thing that happens to me was 5 months ago. We have an attic, so since I'm upstairs, I'm right below the attic. And one night about 2 or 3 a.m., I heard a ball rolling, and then the footsteps of a child running in the same direction as the ball. My curiosity was too strong, so a few days later, I was curious but afraid to die, so it took me a while to decide, don't judge me. I decided to go visit my wonderful attic, and guess what? No floor. Nothing. Just moss and dust. How the fuck did I hear these footsteps? And even if it was an animal, I wasn't supposed to hear any noises if there's no floor. So this is what I noticed. But there's more. The first room I had was before my stepfather's and mother's room. They told me she'd often woke up in a panic because she was drowning. Yes, you read that, she was drowning. She had water in her lungs and in her mouth, and when she woke up she would spit out water, lots of water. Our attic has burning walls. We don't know why, but we think it's part of the reason why the house is haunted. In our basement, there was a pentacle drawn with paint. I hope it was paint. And some weird stuff. I don't really know a lot about the basement. My mom doesn't want to tell me. And there's also flies in our house. But our house is clean. I live with household potholders. Our house is clean, I swear to God. 2. So basically when I was a kid, about 9 years old, I remember a pretty horrible phase in my life where I would see shadow people everywhere. They were all black. They looked like the silhouettes of people. They would appear in my room and just stand there and observe me. They would also sometimes walk around. Some would approach me and try to give me things. There was a man with a hat that always tried to give me a box. He would often come to me and reach his hand out to me with the box in it. I would also see random shadow faces pop up right in front of mine. They weren't necessarily scary looking, but to me, just the fact that they were there all the time was extremely terrifying. I was so scared my only solution was to ignore them. I was a kid after all, and I desperately hoped they would go away and lose interest in me if I paid no attention to them, but they wouldn't. They were everywhere. It reached a point where I was basically at my mom's side all the time when she was home, and when she wasn't, I'd hide in my room under my blanket all day and wait it out. I can't remember how long exactly I was seeing those creatures, but to me, it felt like a never-ending nightmare at the time. I did tell my mom about it, but at first she brushed it off and said I'm just imagining things or trolling her. But it became more and more obvious that it wasn't the case. She came up with the idea that they were spirits, and that honestly just scared me even more. Spirits watching me? Hell no. What do they want? She got hooked on this thought of me being blessed with the gift of seeing spirits, so she sent me to a lady she found online that claimed to be able to do the same. I was so scared, I just wanted them gone, no matter what the price. I told her I wanted to be normal again. She said she could perform a ritual to make me not be able to see them anymore. She laid me down and spoke some words I can barely remember now, and after the ritual, I was actually not seeing them any longer. At the time, I was just so happy they were gone, and I forced myself to never think of them again. She told me not to think of this anymore, as they might see it as a sign to come back to me. But after this, 2 big black dots appeared on the walls of my room. One was just over my bed, and the other on the other side of the wall at the same exact place. It wasn't mold, just unidentified black coloration. We would paint them over, and they'd be back the next day. I got scared again, so my mom decided to give me another room of the apartment. After I switched rooms, they stopped appearing. For years, I brushed it off. I ignored it and pushed it away. It was just too scary for me to deal with. But lately, I've been wondering about what happened back then a lot. I just don't understand it, and I can't find anything online similar to what I've experienced. I'm an atheist and I believe in science, yet I have no possible explanation for this occurrence. Other than that, I wonder now if I might be sick somehow, but the wall. What about the wall? Ever since that ritual was performed, I never saw anything like it again, and I just can't comprehend why and how. I wrote this with the hope of maybe finding someone that went through something similar, willing to share their experience with me, or just general opinions on what this all could have been about. Thank you in advance. 3. So this story I'm about to tell y'all happened around 12 years ago. I will include some context first so that you guys understand it better. There's this legend where I come from, the Galipote. According to Google, this is the definition. To become a Galipote, one must make a pact with the devil himself, selling their soul for the ability to change oneself into another form. A witch doctor is also able to help transform a human into this evil creature. This is not one of those legends created to make kids be respectful or to scare them into not doing wrong things. This is a nationwide legend, used, to what I understand, to alert people who like to travel alone or in pairs, people who are too kind and like to pick up people from the road to give them rides, or just people with luck who find them running around. Anyways, I was around 10 years old when this happened. Galipotes have never been something mentioned as much in the city as in the countryside, and so I never believed it. My grandma always tells stories about them, though. She'll say things like, "You guys heard that chicken clucking? That's a Galipote because it's after 6 p.m., and they should be sleeping by now." But, I never thought there was such a thing. Well, at the end of 2009, one of my cousins, Andres, disappeared out of nowhere. He was on subs and stealing, so everyone knew something like this would happen at some point. Well, 2 months later in February, we all went to a cousin's house. All my family was talking about him. The last time somebody saw him was 2 blocks away from said cousin's house. Anyway, the clock hits 1 a.m. and my cousins are watching a horror movie. I don't remember what the movie was, but me and my older cousin, a 16-year-old female, decided to go and listen to the gossip of the grown people. We go outside and sit with them. It was my aunt, my grandma, my aunt's cousin and her husband, 2 of their neighbors and us. We were talking about how Andres was so funny when he was younger, and how his mom was the one who introduced him to drugs and robbery. As we were sitting outside, it was on a hill, by the way, we heard someone running really fast like a horse. At 1 a.m. in the city. Weird, but not that much. He went running at the end of the hill and we saw him. Nobody was riding him, and out of nowhere somebody is running behind him, chasing him. We all got up because obviously we got a little scared. My grandma immediately asked us to go inside, to which I said no and went crawling to her. The neighbors got so startled that they took their chairs and went inside their house. My aunt just said, "That's a galapote," started laughing. Well, we go inside and tell our other cousins about what happened, and they didn't believe it. My grandma told them, and that's when they got scared. It's around 2 a.m., probably, and we're all in bed trying to sleep. We heard a knocking on the window. It was 6 of us in one room, and we all heard it. My 11-year-old male cousin said to me, "Get up and open the door," to which my other cousin, Anna, 13 female, said, "It's at the window." I didn't say anything, but I knew it was at the window. My aunt comes into the room and tells us to go to sleep. Her son asked her if she was knocking on the wall, and she said, "Isn't it you? Stop playing and shut up." My older cousin started crying, saying that was a galapote. Her mom came into the room and told her to grow up and left. Not even a minute later, somebody knocked on the window so hard that it felt like it was going to break. My aunt comes running into the room, and we're almost crying at this point. I don't know how, but I'm inside the closet with my 2 younger cousins, sobbing. She said something between the lines, "Why are you guys making all the noise at somebody else's house?" I think she thought we were playing or something. Then the front door. Somebody knocked hard enough for my uncle to come all the way from the back room, and he goes, "Who is it?" "This is Carmen," and he opens. It was a neighbor. She said, "There is something knocking on our window." Everybody came out, but not my grandma or us. We stayed inside cuddling, and my grandma was praying, "Santa Maria, Madre Dios, ruega por nosotros." Nothing. We managed to fall asleep in the living room, while the adults were scattered around the living and the room where we were. The sun comes out, and everybody gathers outside. They found a shoe all dirty, a piece of hair on both sides, the neighbors and ours, and pieces of corn. Fast forward a month later, and all my cousins were at my grandma's house, 9 of us and my little sister, 3 years old at the time, and she's sleeping in a room by herself. My grandma had this feeling, and she asked us to tune in for the news. There he was, the man in the news was asking for people to come all the way to the countryside to identify the body of, and they show Andres Antonio Caceres, not his real name, who is originally from, well, that doesn't matter. My grandma only said, "I knew it." They showed his body. His face had been ripped off, and he was only wearing jeans. He threw him in a hole, and his wallet was on the side of the hole. Minutes later, my sister started crying, and my grandma yelled at the window, "Vete, ya es hora de que duermas, ya son las 6. Leave, it's time for you to sleep, it's past 6. Then we heard a chicken. 4. I'm very much a logical-minded individual, and have always tried to apply the more reasonable explanation to any given situation. Over the years, I've experienced a number of scenarios where I've struggled to apply this reasoning, primarily within 2 specific locations, my parents' house, which I grew up in, and a pub I used to work at. This particular story is probably the reason for my beliefs, as it happened back when I was 3 or 4 years old. It has stuck with me throughout my entire life as one of my most vivid memories. It was a routine weekday morning, my brother and I eating breakfast at the kitchen table while my parents got ready for work. Suddenly there is a faint yet high-pitched, almost tuneful whistling coming from somewhere. My mother stopped and began to attempt to track down where this noise was coming from. It was an ongoing sound, so it didn't take very long to locate the source. Within one of the kitchen cupboards, we used to have a tin full of candles for birthday celebrations, and amongst these candles was a single singing candle. You know the ones where you light them, and they whistle the tune to Happy Birthday? It continued to sing over and over with no signs of stopping. My mother tried running it under cold water in case it had somehow, however unlikely, got warm in the cupboard, but on it went. Eventually she saw no other option but to pull it apart, and that was when the candles stopped. It was brushed off as, "Wow, that was a bit odd," type moments, but no further real thought was given to it. The morning continued as routinely as it had started. It wasn't until a little later on, when we were about to get in the car, and I, as an innocent child, simply remarked, "Maybe it's someone's birthday." Little did I realize at the time how much this simple statement would stop Mother in her tracks. As it turns out, it was in fact her father's birthday. This was the first year that she had forgotten since he passed. I don't think my mother has ever truly forgiven herself for pulling that candle apart, after realizing that he may have been trying to get in touch. A year or so later, on his birthday, I remember we actually made a cake, with a single singing candle in the middle. We didn't light it, but the two of us sat around the same table in the kitchen in the evening. Lights dimmed and waited. Sadly, nothing. This experience has opened my mind to a world that I don't think we can ever truly understand. Unfortunately, ever since I moved out of my parents' house a number of years ago, and eventually changed jobs, the frequency of difficult-to-explain experiences have reduced to zero. Still, I remain as open-minded as I've always been on the subject. 5. Just to preface, this happened about a year ago. I've never really had mind-altering anything, other than the small sips of alcohol at family gatherings. One night, I was hanging out with two friends past dark. We were only a 15-minute walk from my house. My area has a somewhat decent patch of wooded area surrounding us and past my neighborhood. We had recently been making Wendigo jokes in group chats and whatnot, and it was the kind of thing that would scare one in our group of 3. So naturally, me and the other guy decided to start making all sorts of jokes, calling them out and whatnot. Doing stuff like whistling towards the woods. Well, the time comes for everyone to go home, and I live the opposite way of the other two, so we split up and started walking our separate ways. I was never really bothered by walking home at night, as I'm a pretty average 6-foot-tall dude, so no problem. I put in some headphones and went on my way. After a short period of time, couldn't have been more than a minute, I heard what sounded like someone stomping directly behind me. Not like a slap of a shoe, but a solid thump. I turned around almost instantly, and to my surprise, nothing was there. At first, I was a little confused by it, and felt like it could have just been me who made the noise, or maybe it was just a weird part of this new song I was listening to. After a similar amount of time, I heard it again, and again a third time. Now I was starting to feel confused and somewhat scared. To test my music theory, I took out the headphones, and sure enough, that thump sound happened again and again, yet every time I turned to look, nothing was there. At one point, I passed by someone loading up their car. As soon as I passed them away to a darker spot, and the loudest one yet, still directly behind me, happened, I instinctively ducked and covered my head with my hands when this one happened because it was just so loud. I hurried home, hearing it every short moment, and just in front of my house, down this street, was another house, with a large tree and no lights blocking out all light. And I reckoned it wasn't random I predicted it to hit there, and sure enough it did. I hurried inside and told my friends and was paranoid the rest of the night. Thank God nothing else happened. I'm not sure if it was related to the Wendigo jokes earlier, but I'm very curious as to what could have happened. In hindsight, I should have 100% recorded it, but in the moment, I guess I was too preoccupied to think about it. Anyone have anything similar? Or have any answers? Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 298. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, if you could please hit the like button and share the video around with friends and family. I greatly appreciate it if you do so. Okay, let's see. No special shout-outs as far as I remember. I think the next one's the 20-something. So let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, if you could swap your brain out with somebody else's, now you would still be you'd just have somebody else's mental capacity, their memories, perhaps their disposition as well, who would it be? I'm going to pick Dwayne Johnson, aka The Rock, because that man has drive. That man has got drive for days and then some to spare. I wish I was as driven as he was. I also wish I was built like that, but if I had his brain, then maybe I would be. Who knows? I suppose I could work out more. Anyway, maybe there's someone you have in mind, so to speak. So please do let me know your answers in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.